Good afternoon. I'm Alicia Wilson. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this week's edition of Entrepreneurship Matters. Today, we are in for an extreme treat. We have two of the world's most accomplished dermatologists talking to us about their journey. What we know is that entrepreneurship and successful businesses are not built in a day. It takes a lot of grit, long-term commitment, multiple failures to make it happen. And the two entrepreneurs that we're featuring today are no different. We started this 46 weeks ago at the urging of an amazing entrepreneur, Cameron Moses. I know she's watching. And we have continued to have rich conversations with entrepreneurs. Let me introduce you to the entrepreneurs we're talking to today. And I know you will have questions and all sorts of lift ups for both of them because they're two dynamic women. I invite Dr. Burgess and Dr. Kindred Weaver onto the to come onto the screen, and we're going to get started. So let me give their bios, which are extensive, but I am going to do both of them and give all of their information. Let me start with Dr. Kendra Weaver. She is a board certified dermatologist born in Oakland and raised in South Central LA. She is a national speaker and also the owner and founder of Kindred Hair and Skin Center in Columbia, Maryland. She grew up in South Central LA and Arab California, known for its tough streets and strong community spirit, and a place where overcoming adversity was not simply a choice, but a way of life. Growing up, she garnered a reputation and love for education and her desire to help others achieve their goals. It was this that drove her to be within the field of dermatology. She began her studies at the University of Southern California, where she earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in Spanish, and where she continued her educational pursuits, not just earning her MD degree, but also her MBA at the University of Cincinnati. She was awarded a full scholarship as a Yates Fellow for the MBA program, and was only the third person in history at the University of Cincinnati to receive an dual MD MBA degree. She has garnered a passion and focus on hair loss and ethnic skin. We're going to talk about that today to hear a little bit about that love. And thankfully, she, after graduating from her residency at Howard University, she became a leading dermatologist at MedStar Health, and she currently owns her own dermatology office. She is quite accomplished. She is the founder and president of Onyx Medical Society, chair of the National Medical Association Dermatology Section, fellow of the American Academy of Dermatology, member of the Women's Dermatological Society, and has received countless awards and been featured on shows like Doc McStuffins, ABC News, and the like. And she has several publications and on an array of dermatology topics, including co-writing chapters in leading dermatology textbooks. With that, let me now introduce you to Dr. Burgess. Dr. Burgess is a board certified dermatologist who has gained national and international acclaim for her expertise and contributions to the field of dermatology. She founded the Center for Dermatology and Dermatologic Surgery in Washington, D.C., and currently serves as president of the practice. She is known as an authority. I've had so many calls today about her being an authority on non-invasive cosmetic procedures and advanced dermatological technology. She developed and patented, I'd love to hear about this, a unique technique of aesthetic enhancement using dermal fillers and neuromodulators. She has been a speaker, an invited lecturer for the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, the American Society of Aesthetic Physicians, the American Society of Dermatological Surgery, and the American Academy of Dermatology. She is also on the board of directors of the American Academy of Dermatology. She appears, she probably doesn't look like I'm presenting her to some, introducing her to other, because she has been a medical correspondent on NBC, WRC, Midday News, has been recognized as one of the top dermatologists by her peers in Washingtonian magazine. She is, let me tell you, a person who is both continued her scientific clinical, she's been a clinical investigator on numerous clinical research trials. And you may know that she's a co-founder of Black Opal, which she sold in 2018, but many of us still use that product and thankful that she's on the market. Let me stop with that giving of their resume, because we wouldn't have time if I really did it justice. But welcome, Dr. Burgess and Dr. Kindred Weaver, to this week's edition of Entrepreneurship Matters.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's get right into the conversation. And let me tell folks, and I already see folks already getting in on the conversation, please put your questions, your comments, your lift ups for both of our doctors into the chat on Facebook. You may also put them in the chat on Zoom. And those of you who are listening, please text them 22333 and type JHUWL, and I'll get all of those questions and weave them into the conversation. But let's start with what inspired you to be entrepreneurs, because both of you are, as I gave your resumes, accomplished physicians, high in your game. You didn't have to be entrepreneurs, right? What made you become entrepreneurs? Let me go with Dr. Burgess, and then I'll go to Dr. Kindred Weaver.
Well, during the time when I finished residency, it's kind of like you had to go out there and kill, basically. That's how you were going to make it. You weren't accepted into other dermatologic groups or medical groups. So I remember when Chesahna was a resident at Howard, and I also went to Howard residency program. So she may have a different take on it. And I don't know how many years were different, but I finished my residency in 1988. And at that time, you just kind of went out and did it on your own. So we were kind of bred for that, if you will.
And mine was the opposite. And first off, thank you for inviting me, Dr. Burgess. I feel very honored to be on the same platform with you. I looked up to you then, and I still do now. But no, I feel like my generation of dermatologists, we're actually almost encouraged to go and be employed. That's just a trend. But year by year, we realize it's just not a good fit. It's honestly not a good fit in general for patients when the conflict of the two bottom lines, how much money you're bringing in and pay what's best for the patient, when they collide too much. Mm-hmm. And that's that ultimately what triggered me to go into my own practice. I was just able to do so much more, so much more for hair loss on my own. It allowed me to be more nimble, more flexibility. But what planted the seed years ago is the Kindreds in LA, like we all just own our own business of daycares, cleaners, etc. So that was always in the back of my mind. But once I got into medicine, I thought I wouldn't own my own practice, but I guess the seed was planted and ultimately it was the best solution.
Yeah, we found a lot of entrepreneurs that we talk with, it runs in the family. Mm-hmm. Some are graduate school, and that is what everyone does. So it's interesting to hear the different journeys that you are on. And we have a number of entrepreneurs watch every week and want to know, how do you go from the idea, right? You have a service that you can provide. How do you go from that idea to saying, I'm going to launch a business enterprise? And both of you have enterprises. They're not, they have grown. What were the steps you went through to launching your business? So how did you go from idea, I have a skill, marketable, I can sell it on the marketplace, to really launching that business? Dr. Burgess, I'll start with you, and then Dr. Kindred Weaver.
Yeah, well, when I finished in the late 1980s, the only makeup that I saw out there was fashion fair. And I remember when I was in high school, I went to the local department store to get my fashion fair, complimentary makeup session. And I ended up coming out of there only with the foundation because I couldn't afford anything else. And I started thinking that, this foundation was the closest thing I had ever used as far as looking in the department store, cosmetic counters, or the mass market arena, as far as something that was suitable for our skin color. And so when, and Chesahna can attest to this, that when at our dermatology conferences, we have all these vendors who come and they, you know, from Estee Lauder to L'Oreal and all these, and then we'd stand in these long lines to get these free samples. And then we'd come out and say, dang, it's like beige.
Yes.
So it was not like anything that we could use.
Beige again, beige.
Yeah.
Beige.
Yeah.
So I was just so tired of that, you know, and I'm like, you know, these companies have been around for a long time, and why do we only have fashion fair to suit our complexions? And so that's when I really got interested in doing skincare and color cosmetics, and even line under Black Opal for men and shaving bumps. So that's kind of how it really started, by more of an observation. I mean, you can come up with an original idea, or you can make a better mousetrap. And so basically this was a better mousetrap. You know, we have makeup, we have the technology, we have vertical manufacturing companies that can produce these products, but they're just not being requested. So that's just like, you know, the girdle and you know, the Spanx, same thing. Same exact thing.
Interesting. This one. Yes, I do remember waiting in line for the sunscreen that was for all skin colors, and it made us look like the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz. Right. So for me to go from being employed and comfortable to owning the business, so there's two ways to look at it. One is that leap of faith, right? To go out there on your own. So there's a prayer that I make, that I pray for every like major decision. I probably should do it more often, lesson learned, but the major decisions, this prayer is, I just ask God to make it blatantly obvious what I should do, right? Like blatantly obvious. So like and it's come through every time, from which med school, which residency, who to marry, etc. But more practical than that, I tell my mentees, even before they're ready to start their own practice, very practical tips. One, think of the name. Once you think of the name, buy the domain. I just have a preference for the Google domain. And once you have a domain, get your LLC or whatever entity. But as physicians, we're taught zero business. I got my MBA, but even still, we're taught zero business. So have a lawyer or accountant, somebody who knows what they're doing it. And then finally get a bank account in that name. I'm sure Dr. Burgess would agree with those initial steps as well. And doing those steps is actual exercises or tangible things that kind of help to reinforce whether or not this is for you or not for you. And then I tell my mentees, once you've done those 4 steps, come back and talk to me and I'll let you know what else to do. And it also helps me to know if someone seriously needs to be guided, or if maybe they still have to look within themselves to see if they want to start their own practice.
Yeah, no, both of you said, I've dropped some really important gems, and I know folks are taking notes. This is the time when I take notes on your comments. Dr. Burgess, you talked about finding that void in the market, right? So you saw there was fashion fair and no one else. And how can I fill the void that's in the marketplace? And, you know, answer the call of what is requested. You know, there's a demand out there, but you're building the better mousetrap. And Dr. Kindred, you took us through, right? You won those really practical steps, thinking of the name, buying the domain, getting the LLC, drawing the experts to you, right? The lawyer, the accountant, and then getting the bank account. So if someone wants to write a check, they can actually deposit it into you.
Right.
So those are all important points as folks are thinking about, you know, I have a skill, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. How can I get into practice? Let me getting a lot of questions in so far. Folks, you can continue to put your questions in the chat. I promise I will get to all of them. Let me ask this before I keep going with the questions I have. This question's come up, why dermatology? Was there something that happened as a young person, as you know, you could pick any domain, right? Why about dermatology? Dr. Burgess and then Dr. Kindred?
Well, you know, I have really kind of no idea. I think it was the choice between getting a job one summer between medical school or going back to Tacoma, Washington. So I chose to be in DC. And I used to tease my family, like, I don't want to spend the summer in Tacoma, Washington. I want to stay in DC. So my dad was like, well, you got to find a job. And so my first job was actually at NIH in the Department of Dermatology. And I spent the summer just thinking, oh, this is a job to pass me by, but I'm going to be a surgeon. And I was working for a surgeon at the time. And I had big aspirations to do the big stuff. And then when I decided, you know, I really like dermatology. I like the clinical aspect of it. We were working at the time on dosing for Accutane studies, and probably many people out there have been on Accutane for really severe cystic acne. And so those were some of the original studies that I worked on. And I just really liked that we could make a change in someone's you know, self-esteem or the depression that they may be having with certain dermatologic conditions, and acne being one of the kind of garden variety ones, how it can really truly affect people. Yeah. And so that we can also see the change, and therefore, you know, I had people with Chesahna, and you'll know a lot of these we call them genodermatoses, and that people are kind of born with certain dermatologic conditions. And these are the people who enter into the circus and things like that. That's how they make their living, because their skin or their faces are affected. And I actually had one person to say, you were the first one. My job was to do physical exams on them, and that I was the first one who ever touched them. And I'm like, really? And I was just doing my job. And I realized that the outer, our biggest organ, the skin, that can display so much more than what we really know about the patient themselves. And it's getting to know people and not, you know, judge people on the outer book cover or what have you. And so that really, really touched me. And I really just knew, with knowing the compassion and the empathy that I had, the research that I love to do. And what was really weird was that when I graduated from Howard Medical School, I was, you know, at the top of my class. Everybody's like, you're going into dermatology? You know, as if like, I thought you were doing something like neuroscience or neurosurgery, general. I'm like, no, I'm doing dermatology. And everybody was so surprised, and I don't know why. So it's really good to stick to your passion. I knew that it was something that kind of knocked me in the back of the head, probably meant to be. And like Chesahna said, you have to listen to, you know, they say when God's throwing pebbles at your head, don't let them throw a brick at you. So you have to pay attention to what sensory that you're getting. And that was for me, and I love it. I mean, I look forward to getting up in the morning, coming to work. So, and all the other things that I do that are really very artsy. I really like art, and involving that into my artistry into what I do as well. So it all just fit down the road. It just fit.
It's a really important point for many watching who maybe people want to choose the career for you, right? They'll choose what they want your passion to be. But you talked about figuring out your own passion. And I love talking about that internship, because we have young people watching. who the value of the internship is to help you expose you to something you've never been exposed to before.
Exactly.
Imagery of, and motivation for folks watching. How about you, Dr. Kindred Weaver? Did you wake up in the morning, 5-year-old, you say, I want to be a dermatologist? How did you get into dermatology?
I had no clue what dermatology was.
No clue, okay.
So well, we didn't just, growing up, we did not have exposure to dermatologists, right? So our exposure to doctors was a pediatrician. And then if you played sports, you heard about a sports doctor. So I went to medical school thinking I wanted to be a pediatrician, but med school does a very good job of exposing us to different fields for you to kind of get a sense of what you want. And it did not include dermatology. So I was a med student. I loved every rotation. But when I left after my 3rd year to get my MBA, my advisor told me, you're about to leave the house of medicine and go into the house of business, which is a completely different beast. Keep one foot in the door of medicine. So he said, get yourself exposed to something you didn't have any exposure to. And that was urology and dermatology. Clearly I picked dermatology. And I did a couple of research papers on the side while I was getting my MBA. At some point, I decided I wanted to go into ophthalmology. And the derms I'm working with are looking at me side-eye like, you got this paper published, you're gonna go to ophthalmology? Right? And I just thought, so then I get my MBA, I return to medicine, and I'm doing what's considered an advanced rotation or an AI in ophthalmology. And I was bored out of my mind. I'm just looking at people like this all day is what I felt like. I felt like I didn't care about it.
I'm just looking on here saying like,
right. And then I'm thinking back to dermatology and those papers that we published involved all kinds of things. So I go back and I do a dermatology rotation and absolutely loved it. And this is a really good lesson. So I did not decide to go into dermatology until October of my 4th year. And anybody who has any connection with medicine know that is like career suicide, right? So what I do, I ask God to make it blatantly obvious. Should I do ophtho or dermatology? He said dermatology. I applied and I did not get in. That was the first failure I had ever had in my life, but it needed to happen. Looking back, you need to have some major failure, I think, so that way all the other things that come along look easy. So then eventually, obviously, I got into dermatology, right? I paid my dues and did tons more research, so on and so forth. But that's what did it. I was just looking for something while I was getting my business degree to not be completely removed from medicine, and those dermatologists at the University of Cincinnati are the reason why. Shout out to Dr. Hugh Gloucester.
It's so beautiful how you put your prayer of blatant obvious, right? And also how you just reconstructed the failure into a necessary pivotal moment to prepare you for the rest of your career. And I know there are many that are, feeling failure in moments of failure. We all have them. But talking about how that was transformative. Let me shift us to a question that's coming up a couple of times in the chat, and we're getting texts in on it, which is, what are both of your experiences with mentorship? Both of you are groundbreakers, right? Top of your game. And you just shouted out your mentor, one of your mentors, someone that, can you talk about that and whether it was finding a mentor or becoming a mentor? How has mentorship played into your success as an entrepreneur and your development as physicians? I'll start with you, Dr. Burgess, and then the Kindred Weaver.
Yeah, well, growing up, I didn't have a mentor. I think it was the part of the country that I grew up. There weren't a lot of Black professionals. And during undergrad at the University of Washington, a lot of times I was the only one in my class or what have you. And I was persistent in, when I was applying for medical school, was to apply to HBCU, anywhere. Didn't matter. I think at that time there were maybe 2 medical schools. And so I remember really my desire was to go to Howard, and I got into Howard like 6 weeks before school was supposed to start. I mean, I was just like, oh, I didn't get accepted this year. Well, I had gotten accepted at the University of Washington, but I knew I didn't want to go there. I wanted to try something new. I wanted to get more exposure. But once I got to Howard, I got in. Once I got to Howard, I gained so many mentors. I mean, they're just all around you.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of framed how I go about doing things, in that I mentor a lot of people because I really know how I felt. There was no one to take me under their wing. And in fact, I just finished yesterday a Future Leaders in Dermatology program that was 6 months long with younger dermatologists. I mean, I'm kind of on the phase of, when am I going to retire? What's my exit strategy here? Because I've been in practice for 33 years. But I still find the time, like I have a high school student working for me this summer before she goes to college. And you know, she was out of school every Wednesday, so she came every Wednesday. And so if I can just give an ounce of information to try to direct people in the right direction and not have to recreate the wheel, like in a lot of instances I had to do, I mean, it's mind-boggling how many people just keep stepping over the same thing. If you have a mentor, I think, and you listen to your mentor, I think you can make headway. That's the key. They say a good leader follows behind. So you want someone to have the initiative, and you know, I'll be behind you and push you, but I shouldn't be the one leading. You have to really have enough aspiration to do what you want to do, and get the mentor who aligns themselves with the same focus. But no, I mentor all the time. Chesahna does too. We all do in the Skin of Color Society, and we have, I think right now in the society, we have more students who are members than actually dermatologists of color. So we know that there are a lot of people out there wanting, and I do as much as I can, but yeah, I'm almost retiring here.
We're going to talk about that. I do want to get there. We are going to get to that. There's you know, we need to make some plugs. We need to help make sure you giving so much. We have to make sure we get you right. Dr. Kindred, what about you? Mentorship. How has that played a role in your development?
So I've had similar instances. One where I had no mentor, and I was just going wherever the wind blew me, and it just happened to land into med school, I feel. But then once you have a mentor, you have this guidance that keeps you from falling through these trap doors. And I think what's very important is that mentees become mentors. So this year, 2020, was really, really tough on our mentees. So for the NMA, the National Medical Association, the dermatology section, we were able to match over 200 mostly Black aspiring students with mentors. And then the majority of our fourth year students matched into dermatology this year. And we immediately took those mentees that are now matched and turned them into mentors. The pipeline, because we have to strengthen the pipeline. And then here in Howard County, I founded the Organization for Black Physicians that live and work in Howard County, Onyx Medical Society. And we're now strengthening that mentorship program. I literally have 3 medical students in my kitchen that are rotating with me this summer. And we're catching them in their first year, because they have a summer in their first year, if they're interested in dermatology, to try to tell them ahead of time what those trap doors are. And I think if we can strengthen that pipeline, then, right, Dr. Burgess, they won't be falling through some of the same traps that we fell through. You got to keep the doors open.
And also the specialty of dermatology is so competitive. I think it's number one next to plastic surgery. And where if you don't know from high school what you want to do,
Yes.
not and go into college and get good MCAT scores and things like it actually, they look at all of that, even though it has nothing to do with really anything. But definitely in medical school, what Chesahna is saying is they're catching the first year, most medical schools, the first summer you have off, the second summer you're studying for boards. So the first summer is really your only summer to really get in there and kind of know that you want to be a mentee and work under someone and get some advantage out of it. You're going to need letters of recommendations. You're going to get, you know, and it's also who you know, but you have to have a strong application that I can be behind. Because I can't be behind a weak application. It ruins my reputation. It ruins Chesahna's reputation. It just doesn't work. And then the next good student who comes through and you try to recommend them, they're gonna say, oh, she recommends anybody. So we have to be very specific in who we move forward. And it's the ambition. And we're also looking at, especially with medical school and residency, is the journey of the person. You know, Chesahna grew up in South Central. I grew up in Pacific Northwest, and we had some journeys.
Yeah.
And it's not just the grades, it's how you got from one point to the next, and all the obstacles and the trap doors and all of those kind of things. So we're trying to be a little bit more sensitive to that with all of our students. And so that all of those things matter. So the earlier you get started, particularly in the specialty of dermatology. Now I always laugh because if I had to apply for dermatology today, I probably wouldn't get it. It's so hard. It's so hard.
They all get together and just
I think they would take you. I think they could see promise in both of you.
I'd have to pay them under the table or something.
No, I doubt that you wouldn't be there.
Right. But all I'm saying is that when I applied to get in dermatology, it wasn't as rigorous as, say, when Dr. Kindred Weaver applied, and it's getting even worse with each generation. So it's important to know what you want to do. And like she was saying, it's not an option in medical school as an elective. You have to think about it and then seek it out and do it and decide if you like it. There are a lot of medical specialties that are like that you get no exposure in medical school unless you seek it out.
Both of you are, it's funny you said I wouldn't be there. First of all, let me say thank you for mentoring, and thank you for standing in that gap. It is admirable and necessary, and thank you both for doing it as top of the game as you are. And let me ask this question, which is coming a few times, which is both of you have quite, you're getting a lot of comments from our young people that are watching. HBCU pride for both of you. Doctors are so important. So you get a lot of love on Facebook, where most of our folks are watching. But we received this question: how do you go about building your clientele? So I guess you hang out your shingle or the equivalent of a shingle, and then you have to start building your business in addition to practicing your business. How did you go about building the clientele that you have? Dr. Burgess and then Dr. Kindred Weaver.
Well, first, I'm going to kind of split this up because medicine, I joined every insurance plan that was out there, so that at that time, there weren't really any computers that you went on and found your doctor. So there's this thick book that was sent around, and I wanted to be in those books, I tell you, you know. And so long story short, that's how I got a lot of patients, was taking insurance. And if you have to take Medicare and Medicaid and Blue Cross Blue Shield and all of those, Aetna, you do what you have to do. Then at a certain point, you'll see that the return may not be at the point of where you are in your career, and maybe because I know I had to drop some insurances that I took when I moved downtown DC. It's just too expensive and I had to make some money. So because the reimbursement for insurance is so low, you have to kind of find other sources. But luckily at the time I was starting the skincare business, and I traipsed around this country to every Black expo there was. And that's how,
all of them in between.
remember Black Expo?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
And the Bronner Brothers, but anyway, yeah. So I was at these giving away samples, selling. So, sometimes you have to give a lot away to get in return. And there's a concept also, is that the more you give, you receive 10 times. It's a verse in the Bible, you get rewarded 10 times fold. And it's really true, because there is a phenomena about giving someone something for free.
Yeah.
They in their mind, they feel now they have to do something for you. Yeah. So you're working on that type of marketing. If you can, buy something, get something free, people just, they're captured into that. Or you don't even have to buy anything. Here, I'm giving it to you for free. And it may cost you a dime, and it may retail at $15. You're really not losing that much. No. And so you have to get out of that frame of mind that you're always losing money. You're creating goodwill. And when you create goodwill, a lot of, especially in medical practices, that's what you're selling. You're selling goodwill. You're selling the patients who are loyal to you, and the people who are loyal to that brand. That's what you're selling. Yeah. And so that's what I try to, explain to people, and that it's you have to work it out for your specific situation, but that's what I learned. And that was very hard to learn. Like, I'm giving away all this money, and I'm doing all this, and but the reward is going to be at the end in most cases. So to look at it initially, you can't put it in that perspective.
No, it's good advice. I always say it's the chocolate shop analogy, right?
Yes.
Chocolate, if you had one piece, right? And the tasting.
You have one piece.
Yeah,
you
one
want
piece,
another one, and you end up buying the whole bag.
And you're gonna appreciate the gesture of just getting free chocolate. It's a good thing, right? So I think I agree with you.
Great. And even like the Sam's Club, you go into, or the Costco, you go in, you take a little bite of this and that, and you end up buying it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Kindred Weaver, how about you? How did you build your clientele? You have a significant following as well.
Yes. So I was the main dermatologist for one of the health systems out here. And at that time I had an 8-month wait. So I knew I had all of these patients. What I did was once I knew my address and I knew my start date, right? And so this is 3 months prior. I hired a call center and I put the number up on the website. So when patients were calling to make an appointment, they were able to Google my name. Nobody on earth has my first name, right? So it wasn't that hard to find my website. So they found me, called the call center, and they scheduled the appointment. And derm patients were already used to waiting 8 months. So when they saw they only had to wait 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, when I started off full. And most of them were my current patients. So that helps for someone who's already established and stepping out on their own. That's why getting a Google domain is one of the first advice that I give for starting a business. Having said that, we had broke even 4 months in, and I had a wait of like 6 months by like a year or so in. So at that point, I didn't really need more patients because I just don't have the capacity to do it. So my gears shifted to education. So I would do something called Dermith Mondays every month on Instagram, or every Monday on Instagram, to try to reduce myths, right? Dr. Burgess, I hope I'm saving you time of people not coming in talking about apple cider vinegar.
You.
I don't know how effective I am, but I'm trying, right?
I'm telling you, they have there's a mutual admiration when we call you. Y'all know each other.
Yes, I love that. So yeah, so that educational piece ended up actually making us soar even more. And I do a lot of things in the spirit of education and knowledge. And that maybe that's my chocolate piece. I don't know, because that works for products, but I'm offering a service and trying to help educate. Definitely brought in more patients.
No, I think that's really great advice. And people are able to use social media in such a different way than, before, to get, access to folks. I mean, Dr. Burgess, I have to give you this comment. There's hi, Dr. Burgess. I was a patient in the early 2000s. You and Dr. Borelli were a godsend when my skin was acting crazy. Glad to see you still helping those.
Oh, thank
Black
you.
skin.
I'm so glad we could help you.
Yeah. No, someone said this is my pick me up, and I love seeing this directly. I love seeing these beautiful Black women. Thank you, Johns Hopkins, for this platform. Oh, it's beautiful. And they keep y'all. I'm gonna pepper y'all lift ups in. Folks are just loving on you both as you tell your story. Let me get to this, which is both of you, all of us, dealt with COVID, right? And you navigated the pandemic. How did you do that? I did read somewhere, I can't remember where I read it, where people were paying more attention to their skins because of Zoom. So maybe you got to search, but how did you both deal with COVID and navigate the COVID period, which I think is ending? So we're going to claim that. Dr. Burgess and Dr.
Well, it's really funny that for many years, I wanted to do telehealth. And telehealth or telemedicine is where you're on Zoom with your patient. And with dermatology, a lot of the dermatologic conditions, when we walk into the room, we know what they are because it's a visual thing. We're going to look at it and touch it and do little different things to try to come up with our final diagnosis. But a great dermatologist will know what it is when they walk into the room. And so it doesn't make telehealth that difficult for the field of dermatology. We just can't see 3-dimensional. We can only see 2-dimensional. And then sometimes I have to bring the patient in. But when you're looking into Zoom, it's like you're looking into a mirror, and no one looks into a mirror for 2 and 3 hours at a time. And so that's when you start seeing things. And if you're facing the window, that's your best light. And then people were getting, ring lights. And then if you didn't want people to see you, you reversed the computer and sat with the light behind you, so you look like a dark chocolate spot, and you couldn't see any definition. So we went through all of that, but telehealth, I think, is here to stay. And I'm really glad about that in a sense that, there's certain of our elders who were not able to get out. And so we were able to treat them via Zoom. I think that one of the curtailing reasons why a lot of people didn't do it is because, one, being in Washington, D.C., even though I am like borderline Maryland and Virginia, I have a license in DC and I have a license in Maryland, but I don't have one in Virginia. So if I wanted to see my patient who comes to me from Virginia to my DC office, but during COVID did not want to come, we were going to do telehealth, I'm not licensed to practice medicine.
Wow.
So that was a big issue. When you're dealing with larger states, then that's fine. But in a close area like New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, DC, Virginia, Maryland, you had to have a license in each state, or you're practicing without a license. The other issue is your malpractice insurance went sky high if you were practicing via a Zoom or a non-HIPAA regulated site. And as you can see, Zoom got right on board, HIPAA compliant, everything like that. And they're the ones who were successful.
Yeah.
So that's, you gotta see where the need is, and then you zoom right in on it. And that's what Zoom did. They were right in on it. So I think telehealth is here to stay. I think they're gonna relinquish some of those criteria that they had in place for us.
Yeah.
That prohibited us to practice medicine or without a license or per se. So that's what I did. I did a lot of telehealth during COVID. I had a lot of time off too, which made me need my retirement.
How about you, Dr. Kindred Weaver? How did you navigate this time?
You know, don't you guys wish someone said, hey, everybody, go home for 2 months, relax, and then come back? It would have been totally different than what we went through, right? So anyway,
for 2 months and knowing they was going to be better.
Yeah. I wish, yes. So I switched to Telederm, but initially patients didn't want to, right? So the government announced the shutdown on like a Monday. Tuesday, we had some stragglers. By Wednesday, we were completely via Telederm. And that week, people were like, no, I'll just reschedule. Because I think no one understood the magnitude of it. But as a couple of weeks went by, patients were taking our offer to switch their appointments to Telederm. So we did that. Next, I refused to fire any of my staff. Remember, we had no clue how long this was going to last.
Yeah.
Right. And when I was talking to colleagues, they were letting staff go, and I refused to do so. And we all just tightened our belts, rolled up our sleeves, and just made it work. So products, cut expenses, etc. The other thing is I specialize in hair loss. That's my niche. I'm the only dermatology practice with a full service hair salon in my office, specifically for patients with hair loss. And when my patients came back, even the best, everybody's hair fell out. Everybody was worse. Everyone lost progress. And so I shut down accepting new patients from when we returned in May until September, just to make sure we can get all of our current patients back on track. There were some exceptions, there was an emergency, but that's how we had, that's how we adjusted, you know, those first few months into when the pandemic was known.
Wow. I mean, we're getting so many. You shouldn't have said hair loss. Now you're going to have, I don't even, just prepare the call center. Prepare the call center.
Y'all better be nice to Miss Veda and Miss Rochelle when they tell you our next.
All right, you know their names now. Everybody
be nice to them.
Their names. So be nice to them when you call. Let me get this question in, because I feel like we're gonna run out of time, because people are just so engaged with both of you. Thank you both for appearing. We do know that Oprah's watching. She did. She tuned in today. A couple other people did too. A couple other people, investors. They want to know, how can they be supportive of businesses like yours? How can we, as consumers, right? Some of us consuming, how can we be supportive of businesses like yours, helping you to thrive as business owners? Dr. Burgess and Dr. Kindred Weaver?
Well, when I first started in the late 1980s, I had to put a business plan together. I researched it, how to do it. And not one bank offered me any loans or funds or anything. So at that time, I worked for Kaiser. And I said, well, I'll work in my practice 3 days a week, work at Kaiser doing 10-hour days for 2 days. That money was set aside to do my skincare and everything else I wanted to do. So I had to be a little bit disciplined. I was still driving a Volkswagen Beetle. I would, a lot of the things that you would think, oh, she's a doctor and she has, I wasn't really into that. I was really into being successful. And you know, I had a lot of goals and aspirations for myself, which, you know, I didn't say in 2 years, in this year or whatever. I said the time I'm 40, the time I'm 50, the time I'm 60 or whatever. And I really, I know one of my passions is product development and product formulation.
Mhm.
And I'm getting a lot of people asking me about that because I was successful with Black Opal for 25 years. And one of my aspirations was hair care before one of the other co-owners passed away of brain cancer. That everything kind of got shifted. But I think, you know, that is my next step, but also being on board of directors that really count. Board of directors that, you know, for big pharma, and which is right along my medical field. It's not something I have to learn. So if you have a talent and you can, you know, help advise or be on board of directors or what have you, that's like my trajectory right now.
Yeah.
And where I mean, I've seen thousands and thousands of patients over 33 years. At what point am I now making a difference is how I'm viewing that. But if you're not in the room, you have nothing to say.
Yeah. No.
And that's where I am right now.
Yeah. Let's put a fine point on that. The Burgess, you need her in the room in the board of directors.
Yeah, actually, you know, I'm doing some work right now with L'Oreal, and you know, I'm helping with advisory on advisory board for their newest acquisition, which is called It Cosmetics, and it's in Sephora and Ulta and beauty cosmetic places across the country. And it first started out on QVC. So this was a woman, Jamie, who was a anchor who just really had a lot of redness in her complexion, Caucasian woman. And so she came up with a derma blend for white skin. So again, it's reformulating and finding the better mousetrap, going from the girdle to the Spanx.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the same thing. We're just mainly modernizing it. And so I don't know, one of my favorite shows is Shark Tank, because I just like to see what people are bringing to the table. And if you really critique it, you see that it's an area of need, or where they think it could be need, depending on, you know, mass market and what's going to buy, but also the new mousetrap.
Yeah. 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 No, Dr. Kindred Weaver, how would you say? You're speaking to Oprah, you're talking about how you can, what she can do to contribute to support other entrepreneurs like you. What would you say to her?
So we just purchased a building because we just took completely outgrown.
Congratulations.
And we're going from, thank you. We're going from a 1,500 square foot space they're releasing to a 8,600 square foot building. We're going to take the bottom floor. And one of my mentors, Dr. Johnson, actually, Dr. Burgess, recommended we buy our space so that when gentrification comes in, we still can stay where we are. So I think investors, if they can invest even deeper in the infrastructure, that is for businesses that are service oriented, right? And I love like our different perspectives, because Dr. Burgess is giving you a product perspective that I wouldn't be giving. If I own my space, I can stay there, regardless of how the wind blows. I think there's certain things that just build a foundation that allows the dermatologist to do dermatology, right? That allows the accountant to do accounting, because we weren't trained to, I don't know, do business things. So for me, buying this building tells me that I can stay here for the long haul and not, you know, be gentrified out or et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I think it's good. And, you know, I've been in real estate development for probably the past 2 years, and purchasing the building is key to owning destiny, right? And so such an important point. We're going to run out of time. I'm going to get a couple questions in. I don't know who put this question in the chat. I'm going to ask it for you because I want your question answered. But thoughts about tattooed eyebrows?
Okay, so we just started doing scalp micropigmentation, and go for it. It's like microblading. It's fine.
Okay. All right. This last question I'm going to ask you both is, what's next? Both of you have accomplished so much in your careers. You're at the top of your game. Dr. Kindred Weaver, what's next for you? You don't have to reveal secrets, no secret, but you can just tell us what's next for you.
So we're actually in the process of doing it. I want to build a clinical research center where research trials have a hub for things that are important for the Black community, diseases where we carry the burden, and it includes a large percentage of underrepresented minorities in research, because we still are in a phase of garbage in and garbage out. And then Dr. Burgess and I end up looking like boo-boo the fool when we give you this new medication that doesn't work, and we didn't know it wasn't going to work. And it was because no matter how well read we are, if all of our patients weren't included in the research, then we end up figuring it out on our own. So that's something I probably should tell Oprah too. Is that help us?
She's still on.
She's still on. Excellent. Yeah. So the top floor, we're trying to make that a research unit.
Well, we're praying for you. We're asking for it to be blatantly obvious and support.
Blatantly obvious. Yes.
Blatantly obvious. That's the prayer. Dr. Burgess, how about you? What's next for you?
Well, I'm highly involved in clinical research right now. My aspect of clinical research is more on the cosmetic side. So when it comes to the fillers and the neuromodulators and things like that, I've probably been one of the clinical investigators for those trials. And mainly because what Chesahna said is there haven't been a lot of skin of color in these clinical trials. So when a company comes out and they say, oh, it's great for everybody, the FDA is saying, wait, they stop them short and say, no, you only had 1% of skin of color in your clinical trials. So I do a lot of clinical work. In fact, we just finished one on a longer lasting, like Botox. It's going to be called Daxi. That's going to be FDA approved very soon. So I do a lot of clinical research, and that goes back to when I said my first job in medical school, that first summer, I just really love it and have done it the whole time. And I find it's important because you can look at COVID and see how many African Americans or skin of color or what have you got misinformation about the COVID vaccinations and the vaccine. And because we have been trapped in some of these clinical trials unbeknownst to us, and there has even been one in dermatology in which they were looking at hydroquinone and testing it on inmates in prisons. So it's very familiar to us in the field of dermatology, but most people just kind of know about the Tuskegee experiment and things like that. But you have to also look at Auschwitz and the Jews and all. So the Helsinki Act that came out in the 1970s was to ensure that these clinical trials are safe for everyone. When you sign the consent form, you have to be knowledgeable about everything. And even if you decide, oh, tomorrow, I shouldn't have signed it, I don't want to do it, you're allowed to get out of it. And so the history of clinical trials has come a long way. So I'm still involved in that. But I've also been on board of directors for the Women's Dermatologic Society, the American Society of Dermatologic Surgery, executive committees. Now I'm on the board of directors for the American Academy of Dermatology. So I'm in the room. I'm at the top in the room. And but I think, being on the board directors for my specialty, I want to venture outside of that, like companies like L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, et cetera, because of my other entrepreneurship background and my medical background. So that's where I'm headed. You know, to get up and come to work and see, you know, 60 patients a day, that doesn't, you know, play out too long. You know, you do get tired, but I still love my patients and I come in every day for my patients. But there are other things, like I said, that I just set goals for myself. There is a cutoff of, I think, about 74, 75 of being on boards that you used to get on a board and stay forever till you die, but that has changed. So if you think that's something what you want to do, you need to decide that early. And so that's kind of the position I am right now. So stay tuned. I'll let you know.
Stay tuned. Let me just say, it has been an absolute pleasure to have both of you. And I'm going to tell everyone, they have patients at noon. So I'm going, at 2. So if they have to leave, I'm going to wrap us up. It has been an extreme pleasure. I hope that as I pray the same prayer as Dr. Kindred speak, that God make it blatantly obvious to both of your success. So thank you both for being here. We have all the ways to get in touch with them. Center for Dermatology and Dermatologic Surgery. You can go Facebook, Instagram, Twitter to find them. Kindred Hair and Skin.com for Dr. Kindred. Thank you both. We'll be returning next week again at 1 o'clock. This week, we're going to be doing funeral homes. Don't worry, it's going to be an uplifting show. Please follow us on JH Connects on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you to our partners, Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins Health System, Hopkins Local, the Mayor's Office of Small Minority Owned Women in Business, Warnock Foundation, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, and Bloomberg Philanthropy. Thank you, Dr. Burgess and Dr. Kindred Weaver. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. Have a good
one.
See you soon, Dr. Burgess.
Bye-bye.